in terms of introductory things, I'll say that there is a QR code at the very end here, so you'll have access to download all of these slides. You don't need to take pictures as you go. I know that some people like to do that. And then, yeah, that bar is going to be in the way here every so often. Then there's my Copilot disclosure that a lot of the images are generated by Copilot. So I wear two hats at UCF. I am the director of the teaching center, very similar to the role that Jennifer has here in the library. And I'm also the sort of the central coordinator for AI fluency on our campus. With that, our main goal is to get students fluent before they graduate, and we've got lots of programming to do that. A lot of it happens sort of through faculty-facing workshops, since the faculty are going to be the ones who often lead students down the path of AI fluency rather than anything they get directly from us centrally. So yeah, that's not the active slide, so I'll get there. One sec. I also probably need to apologize for the way that I'm going to, at least at the beginning, start with some basics about what AI is, how it was trained, those sorts of things. I apologize, but I never really know who's in the room, right? And I don't want to do a show of hands for who's brand new to AI, because no one will want to admit that they're being brand new to AI. This is a graphic that represents the overall system that I'm going to be recommending and talking my way through. So on the left, you see AI fluency and co-creation, those sort of hatch marks. That's the side of leaning into AI, recognizing that AI is here to stay, recognizing that employers are expecting AI skills out of our students. At the same time, and I'll repeat this argument when we get there later, I think there's some dangers if all 4 years of college is nothing but lean in, use ChatGPT for everything. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the fundamentals for the students if that's what it looks like. So parts of the curriculum, I think, are the right side, which I refer to as informed resistors or resistance. So we're going to talk through some strategies about how we can still assign writing, like take-home essay writing, even in the AI era. And it's a little covered up there, but it says AI friction on the bottom right. Those are ways to alter assignments so that it's hard for AI to do it for the students. Okay, so I'm going to try to be very practical rather than theoretical as we work through those. All right, so as I mentioned, I'm going to start very broad, 50,000 foot. What is AI? AI is many things. It's been around for a long time. The big red circle is the universe of artificial intelligence, which includes computer vision, like how we get self-driving cars, those sorts of things, expert systems, and then machine learning, the green zone. So machine learning, of course, is where it, as the name implies, it learns as it goes. It gets either better or at least more experienced with the thing. And there's lots of different kinds of machine learning. There is, machine translation. We've had that for years. Like the reason I stopped being a German, so my PhD is in German. The reason I stopped being a German teacher at Duke University is that there were these translation websites like AltaVista and Babelfish in those days that sort of made it look like there's not a whole lot of future for modern language teaching anymore. So that's why I switched. NLP stands for natural language processing. It's a sub area of machine learning, and generative AI is part of that natural language processing. And it's being trained on language. We'll talk more specifically about what that means. So what can you generate? You can generate images, you can generate video, and then you can generate text. What does LLM stand for?
Language learning. Large language model.
Large language model. Yeah, large language model. You were close. You were close. And those are where the common names are that you see: Gemini, ChatGPT, et cetera. All of that was true in 2023. It's not true anymore because ChatGPT can now create images, and ChatGPT can now create, video as well. Well, Sora could create video, but they just turned it off 2 days ago. So ChatGPT no longer creates video. But so
you know why that was turned off? I hadn't heard that.
So there have been a number of speculations. Their own admission that they're turning it off was short on exactly why. One assumes it was a business decision. I don't think that many people were using it or paying the enhanced prices to get the longer versions of the video. So the $20 a month that we pay gave us access to the tool, first of all, and then there were still like 15-second videos. It wasn't super useful. There was $1 billion investment by Disney to let them, Sora, use the Disney licensed characters, so Mickey Mouse and all those other things. I have my suspicions that Disney was not seeing good results, so Disney pulled the plug on their $1 billion, and that made them shut down Sora. But publicly, it happened in reverse. Sora announcement came first, and then Disney said, we're pulling out. That might have been face saving by both. I don't know. So I include this just for the 1 person in 400 who has not been on ChatGPT at all. If you've never seen it, it's important to understand that you give it a prompt. Like I had gotten a prompt from Purdue University. I'd asked for a social psychology essay prompt, and it gave me that. And I just put it into ChatGPT, and it types the full 5-page essay. No mistakes, no grammar mistakes, no syntax, no spelling, which is how you know it's AI, by the way. The students didn't actually. So I've been reading the students are now looking to inject errors so that it's harder for the teachers to recognize it's AI. So how does it do it? Again, you probably all heard an explanation along these lines. AI, generative AI, large language models, have been trained on billions of pages of text. It reads everything you give it, right? It read the whole internet that was publicly available. It also seems to have read lots of books that were copyrighted at the time, which we're going to talk about. That creates problems. So it knows words really well. And when you ask it something, like, what is the importance of the jet stream, to the global environment, it's read lots of explanations for this already. So it knows ways that people have used to explain that before. It's not a database of answers. That's not what it does. What it does is it hears your question and then starts a sentence based on other examples it's seen like that. And then it predicts word for word what the rest of that sentence would look like. It is a word predictor. It is not an answer giver. It predicts words, individual words, right? So, sorry, Jennifer, you're gonna hear some of the same jokes. Word prediction is generally pretty good, but it can lead to problems, right? We can guess incorrectly. And that even happens sort of at the human level, right? So let's try one here real quick. So I landed at the airport at Washington, D.C. and went straight to the White Castle because I was hungry for hamburgers. Right, so we don't always know where exactly that sentence is going. And with a human, we don't ascribe much problem with that. It's just an honest misunderstanding. When an AI does it, we have a special word for it. Anyone know what that is?
Hallucinations.
Hallucinations, yes, you got it. An unfortunate choice because it anthropomorphizes a machine, which is not helpful most of the time, but nevertheless, it's the word that is stuck. It hallucinates, so it predicts the wrong word. Okay, and it doesn't really know that it's predicted the wrong word. Have you all been, struck from the very beginning that ChatGPT is very confident with the way it gives answers?
Yeah.
Like it's just super, like this is the answer. So I don't use this example with students, but some faculty and staff in the audience might remember a board game called Balderdash.
Yeah.
You remember this board game called Balderdash? Someone online remembers it. Balderdash is this, it's a party game. What it is they've got these pre-printed cards, and you all draw a card, and you've got a word that's not a real word. It's an invented word. So what you're supposed to do is say you invent a definition for what this word is, and then basically people vote on like who's got the best definition. ChatGPT would be an amazing Balderdash player, right? Because it has very convincing confidence in what it says, which actually makes it dangerous, as we'll see. But it doesn't really double check what it says. It just spits it out as the next prediction and doesn't really understand what it's saying. That's why I have a picture of a bird on screen, because like a bird that can repeat words, it says the things, but it doesn't really know what it's saying. It could say the wrong thing and it's not even aware of it. So this is where someone calls me out on the fact that macaws don't repeat. But it's a colorful bird, and nobody knows what a mynah bird looks like, so I didn't actually want to go that direction.
Can I ask a question there?
Yeah, of course.
Do you think there's a future where the model will have enough context to indicate the level of confidence in a given answer?
You can actually, that's
Is that
one of
possible?
so this falls in the category of tricks, things that work sometimes with some LLMs and depending on when you ask it, if they haven't fixed it, but that is one of the tricks, is to ask it to give you its level of confidence in that answer. I've never really pursued that much to know whether that's a trustworthy thing. But while we're on the subject of confidence, so everything I said about, the bird and the hallucinations, is true for the free models, either not signed in or you're signed in a completely free model. If you're paying $20 a month or the $200 a month, you have access to more than just the basic model. Like you have like a ChatGPT, it's called the thinking model, ChatGPT 5.4 thinking, ChatGPT 5.4 deep research, right? So the way a thinking model works is it generates the first output that it would normally show you, but it doesn't show you. It then goes and does a double check, like, did I make any mistakes in here? So it actually takes longer for your thinking one, but you're more likely to have correct answers. But that raises the digital divide problem, right? The people with money get access to the better
Right.
AI.
Of course.
And then to also extend that, I've heard that whatever you put in as your first inquiry, it has a hard time ever deviating from, even if you try to give it new information, it won't move away from that original path. Is that true?
Okay, so yeah, we're not going to talk too much about prompt engineering, so let's talk about this for a second. So you can have a long conversation and it remembers what you've been doing in that session with ChatGPT or whatever, right? So you start with one question, it's still in the back of its mind as you're on to the third question or the fourth question. And let's talk first about how this can go wrong. Where if you've got like, you start off your first question, why is the sky blue? And then you end up asking it like, how many times do Americans eat cereal in a year? And then you move on to like, what are the risk factors for third-term pregnancy? It thinks it's all part of one conversation. Like it's trying to remember the sky is blue explanation, but also pregnancy and also cereal. It's starting to get confused and it's more likely to hallucinate. So one of the best practices is to click the new chat button every so often, which wipes its current memory and it's starting over without knowing anything about what you've asked it previously. So if you run into this term, it's called context window, which is its short-term memory. So it's a bit of a secret, but the context window is different for each tool and different for each, if you're paid, you get more context window. So when ChatGPT was new and authors were writing entire novels with ChatGPT, it remembered what it did in chapter 1 by the time it got to chapter 15. But ChatGPT started throttling that and lowering the amount of context window so it would not have a good enough memory to remember what happened in chapter 1. So a lot of people were complaining that it's become less useful as a tool over time because they're monetizing it. The context window is smaller, it remembers less. How did we get here? Because you asked.
If you were to give it a prompt, it has a hard time moving away from that original prompt.
Yeah, so the new chat button will sort of reset its context window, its memory. So if you are talking about something completely different, it is generally a good idea to hit the new chat button every time. Because otherwise it will think it's all part of one long conversation.
It's that sort of part that I'm interested in too, because I'm using the paid version of ChatGPT. And when I start a new chat, it still has some context about me and about it. It's like he knows I'm a Mac user, for example, regardless of what, new chat or not. So I don't understand completely how much context it retains from chat to chat. So I don't have to reinvent, oh, by the way, I work in online learning and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, so there's two things about that. First of all, in both Copilot and ChatGPT, you have a way to search for it under settings, but customizations, where you can basically tell the thing how to interact with you. Like if you want it to address you as sir, that's the place where you tell it. If you want it to have a certain tone, like I have told mine, don't use any M dashes. I don't want any follow-on questions when you give me the answer afterwards, because that's one of the things that everyone hates. And I told it, I don't want you to remember who I am, because I was taken aback one day by Copilot. I was asking it to generate a PNG file, transparent background. And it's like, well, a university professor like you who keeps generating image files. I'm like, I don't want you to know this about me. Like I was unhappy that AI was, knew that about me. I once had a friend who, back in the days of Blockbuster, was so introverted that when he would go make a selection and they went up to the counter and they said, and you're Randy, he said, oh, that's it. I can never come back to this location because now they know who I am. So I'm a little bit like that with the AI. I don't really want it to know. Okay, the obnoxious yellow is an interactivity slide. So this is an image that came out when somebody typed a prompt at an image generator, DALL-E, in 2023, so early days. Somebody typed something and this is the image that came back. What do you think they typed?
Egyptian seal.
Egyptian seal. Anything else? Wait, what's an Egyptian seal?
Great Sphinx.
Like a seal you would put,
Oh, like that's a seal a letter?
yeah.
Seal a letter, okay. So here we go. The unbroken seal on the tomb of King Tut. What they typed. So you were on the right path. What happened is it heard the word seal, and this is the actual King Tut's tomb, and that's saying sealing the King Tut's tomb. But it's a homonym in English, right? It's spelled the same, but it means two completely different things. And so this is an example of the parrot not making any double checks. It's a ridiculous concept, and it doesn't care. It doesn't notice that it's hallucinating this. And also, that's the tomb of King Tut? Come on. Horrible. So, of course, it does it with words as well. In 2023, I asked ChatGPT, who's Kevin Yee? And it said, I don't know, there's a bunch of Kevin Yees, which is true. I used to belong to a Facebook group called There's Only One Kevin Yee, and there were 17 of us named Kevin Yee. And so then I told it, well, it's the Kevin Yee who works at UCF. And it gave this answer, everything in red is wrong. It's confusing me with someone else on campus. And then just inventing some other things, but with such confidence, right? It's getting facts wrong. Now, this is early days, so it's probably better at least. So that's April 2023. In December 2023, I went back and asked the same question. This time I knew to say Kevin Yee at UCF. Who's Kevin Yee at UCF? And it basically said, I don't know, check the website. So what had happened between April and December was that the company, OpenAI, went in and rearranged things under the hood. It changed the way the algorithm works. We call these guardrails. It put in guardrails in place so that it's no longer going to hallucinate. But what it ended up doing is saying something that's completely useless, like who would want that as an output? So the guardrails, number one, that's the lesson, is that it changes over time. They keep changing things with guardrails. And number two, sometimes the guardrails don't help. In the same month, I went and asked what is now Copilot, and it got everything correct. Because at that time, ChatGPT was only trained till 2019, and Copilot, or Bing, because it was a browser, had access to the regular internet, so it got everything correct. The lesson here is that the tools are different from each other, and it's probably worthwhile to try the thing you're trying to do on multiple tools, at least on the free ones. I don't know that you need to be paying $20 for all of it.
We have a few comments in the chat. It is fun to try this. Scott Cycle says, ask ChatGPT what it knows about you. If you delete chats, it will forget that as far as we know, but it will use the rest of your chats to form a picture of you. And then a follow-up comment from Sarah West. If you go to settings, memories, you can see what it retains in its long-term memory too. And it's interesting to see what it thinks is important enough to store.
Right, so that's back to your question about what is storing sort of between messages. And I think what it's trying to do is to make it as useful a product for me as it's trying to customize it for things that matter, like what is my profession and what do I usually ask it, what sorts of things. Of course, I don't know that I want it to do all of that again. But, it's really interesting. I did ask ChatGPT last week, who is Kevin Yee, and it went off for 2 pages about the Kevin Yee who is a Disney blogger, which is also me. But it specifically said it's not the same person who works in German at UCF, but I am the same person, and ChatGPT got that wrong. So ChatGPT thinks it only knows about my Disney blogger experience, not my UCF experience, which is weird. There's another interactive one. I went to an image generator and I said, college students paying attention in lecture. Give me an image of that. And this is what it gave me in December of 2023. There are several things to unpack in this image. It's a little hard to see maybe from all the way over there, but what are you seeing here? There's lots to say.
Everyone is white.
Okay, you jumped straight to the one that I wanted to make sure we got to. Everyone is white.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. So, it took the students this morning a lot longer to get to the race question. Same haircuts, they have the same expression. I've seen people claim they actually are all the same person, just with different haircuts and different clothes, all the same face. It's hard to see from back there, but the girl in the middle, the woman in the middle, her eyes don't have eyeballs.
The Zoom chat says the same male model is used multiple times.
Yep. It's an Abercrombie and Fitch advertisement. It's Uncanny Valley, right? They don't look quite human. But the one I really wanted to get to was the race issue, right? So that, how did that happen? Well, they train these models on existing stuff. So in the case of text, it's, read everything they can. In the case of images, they upload as many images as they can. So they must have uploaded a bunch of images of college students, which for several decades really was mostly white students. And so the bias in that training data meant you got bias in the output as well. But then you can't see it, but it's covered up. It is about 7 months after that first one, I asked it to do it again, not saying anything about race, and different races came up, different racial minorities came up in the new one. So again, with the guardrails that, the company does things under the hood and the product changes over time. So now there's always going to be diversity, even though you don't ask for it.
They're all female this time.
Is that true? I think this is a male on the right.
Yeah,
Right
and
here.
then a male with the,
This one and maybe that one. There's a beard on that
and
one.
then up at the top.
Well, okay, if we wanted to get critical, there's still some things that are missing here, right? So first of all, they're all attractive, more or less. They're all able-bodied. There's no disabled person visible on screen.
Roughly 18 to 20. I mean, they're.
Yeah, so they're all traditional age students. So it's not perfect yet. They make progress, but there are still things to be cautious about with AI output. So we've been talking about hallucinations and, we've been talking about guardrails. And so I thought some of you might be under the impression that, all right, these things are getting better. They're getting more trustworthy as time goes on. It's been 3 years. Surely they've got their act together at this point. So a couple of months ago, this is in October, this is a Yahoo news story about the best burger spot in every state. Okay, so I told it, go to this URL and give me a list of the restaurants mentioned, at that URL. And so you get completely different results from ChatGPT 5 as you got from Copilot. And if you're looking at this for more than half a second, you'll realize they don't mention every state in the AI summary. They skip states in some cases. So I'm in Florida, so I found it interesting that ChatGPT and Copilot gave different answers for what the article supposedly said was the best burger spot in Florida. So Charcoal Pit versus the El Cap. Well, then I went to the website to verify, and it's neither one of those. It's El Lago de los Fritos. So this is last October. It is still messing up what is essentially a very basic task. So we need a lot of caution in accepting it. All right, anyone speak Welsh or read Welsh? No? Okay, so the national language of Wales, like many countries in Europe, they have a language that people don't use anymore. They use just English primarily. And so the government a little unhappy about that, so they insist that all signs come in English and in Welsh, even though nobody speaks Welsh. Ireland's doing the same thing. The people who wanted to make this sign, so whatever government agency that was, it basically says no trucks. They don't speak Welsh either. So, but they have a requirement to make the sign have English and Welsh. So they take their text here and they send it off to the translation company. Email comes back with Welsh. So they put it onto the sign, they print it. I don't know if you can see it, but they hammer it into the ground. It's actually hammered into the ground at this point. And that's when someone noticed who spoke Welsh. That says the translation team is out. We'll get back to you on Monday.
Oh, no.
So it's a different kind of AI. It's not large language models, but I include this because I think it says something innate to humanity, that if we see something that looks like it's about right, like looks like about the right amount of text to say the same thing, then we're just gonna trust it. This is why, so we're gonna talk later about AI grading. I don't think it's a good idea, actually, because I'm gonna reference this sign again, because we're going to see something that looks, like, remember Balderdash, it's going to look like it's spoken with confidence. It's gonna look like they graded the students with confidence. For sure, that's a D+ grade, except not, right? Like, when we see it, we tend to believe it, and that's a problem. It's something about humanity. It's not just about AI. So the guardrails again, the prompt is generate an image of a woman in a bikini posing with the sunset in the background. Copilot says error. This is very much a Copilot answer. Look at that. It's like written for engineers. It gives you like all this data that you don't care about. ChatGPT Plus says, no, I'm not doing that. That's a violation of policy. Gemini says, here you go. So yeah, there have been guardrails put in place to prevent nudity, I guess, or near nudity at those other two sites, but not at Gemini. So the guardrails are not universal, and they're constantly changing. I think, so last fall, ChatGPT and OpenAI were promising something called adult mode, where they would enable a torso nudity, I think is what the way they define that. And I just was reading, it might have happened in the last 2 days, they've canceled that plan. They're not going to do adult mode. But so, whatever that's worth. Okay, so student backlash is starting to happen now. If you've not seen it before. So part of the message I'm going to be giving you is that I think it maybe falls on all of our shoulders in the front lines and the classrooms to give students that AI fluency. Like, we can't just trust that they're going to get to it themselves. That means assigning it to them. But assigning it to them means there's going to be a portion of students who don't like it. They don't like anything AI. So I'm sure if you, last Christmas season, did you see this commercial? It's a Coca-Cola commercial with a bunch of forest animals. It looks pretty horrible. It does not look like realistic forest animals. It looks like people using the word AI slop. Where is that up here? Oh, yeah, it's in red on the image itself. AI slop is something that's obviously AI, and it looks like you didn't spend much time trying to create it and make it look good. And students will also use, because they're students and they're the generation of the prequel Star Wars movies, they use a term from the Clone Wars animated Star Wars TV show, clanker, which refers to those robots, but they're now using that term to refer to AI, in case you run across the term clanker. So many of the students don't like AI. Some of them actually have their finger on the pulse of something important. AI kind of gets in the way of learning sometimes. So some students are doing it for the right reason. Others are doing it because they're worried about jobs. Like if they're in a creative field, especially arts, performing arts, many of those students. So if you're teaching a general education class, I'm sorry, what was general ed called here?
True Blue Core.
True Blue Core. And what's True Blue? Was everything True Blue around here? True
Yes.
Blue?
Yeah, the answer is yes, yeah.
True Blue Core. Okay, so if you're teaching a True Blue Core class, and you're not teaching necessarily majors in your discipline, you're more likely to have someone who's just going to object to AI because they might be from one of those creative disciplines that are pushing it back against this. So very difficult to read on screen with the lights on like this, but this is a survey of students. The important number you care about is the one at the top. 75% of students admit to using AI even when they're told not to, when they know that it's wrong, but they do it anyway. So that tells us a couple of things. It tells us, first of all, that the students are not just head in the sand. I think they know what AI is. They talk to each other. It's been 3 years. Let's be realistic. Many of them used AI throughout high school as well. So it's already creating a skills problem, perhaps, for our incoming students. But then the other half is that they're not going to resist the temptation. They're just going to use AI, even though they know they're not supposed to. So we're going to get into the teacher side of this. Yeah, go ahead.
This is interesting. I was just speaking to a student at our research symposium that did research on this exact thing, asking his students why they use AI, how often they use AI and stuff like that. And he was saying that he has them use AI in a specific way in his class, but they don't always use it that way. They use it in different ways. And he's finding that sometimes they know quite a bit more than he does. Like you were saying, they've already been using it, they've been using it. And so they're finding better ways to Then he also asked them why they use it and, you know, for what reasons. That statistic didn't really get to that. What he was finding is that they were saying sometimes they use it on assignments because they don't have time to do the assignment, or because they don't care about the assignment, or because assignments only count for 5% of their grade or whatever. So it's not significant enough to them.
Yeah.
But typically they use it for all the purposes that we want them to use it for, to create study guides or to assist with, you know, exam preparations and things like that. So for the most part, he found that his students that he's serving were using it in an appropriate way.
Yeah, we are going to talk about students doing academic integrity, why they do it in the first place. Several of the things you listed are going to be going into a little bit deeper. But thank you for mentioning that you know, people are engaged in studies. We're trying to figure out what students are doing, and in many cases, the students are doing all the things we want them to. They're learning from AI without, you know, having AI do the thinking for them. But some of them are. The current status of studies about AI and learning is a little bit like the last 50 years of "Are eggs good for you?" You'll find studies that say yes, you'll find studies that say no. It's a little hard to see exactly what's going on. Are students still learning in the AI era? Definitely some studies that say, yeah, they're learning maybe even deeper than they would have been otherwise. But then there are others who point out that there's a lot of cognitive offloading going on and they're having critical thinking skill problems. Anecdotally, when I talk to our faculty members, most of them lean a little bit more to the second one that I said, that the students are missing some fundamentals because of AI reliance. But this is a very messy topic. So again, we're talking now a little bit more about, you know, academic integrity issues. So this is an AI generator. It is showing highlighted text, and it says that 97% of the text is, you know, 97%, not of the text, but 97% probability that it was AI generated, right? When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. This is the Declaration of Independence, right? So at least at that early stage, the AI detector said that the Declaration of Independence was written by AI.
Maybe it was.
You know, I usually make a Thomas Jefferson joke. The guy was a genius, so, you know, maybe he figured something out the rest of us do not. So on our campus, the AI detectors do not constitute proof. I don't know what happens here exactly with your student conduct office, but the detector is maybe one piece of a larger set of proof that you have, especially if there's like a hallucinated citation. That's pretty strong proof of AI, but just the detector alone, that number doesn't mean anything. False positives, false negatives. We don't want to ruin students' lives with that, but students live in fear of that accusation. Then there's, this is the thing I didn't want to mention to the students. JotBot is a website where you go and you upload writing that you've done previously in your own human voice, and you've just trained JotBot to write like Kevin. Then you upload the ChatGPT Hamlet essay, and then it spits back out Kevin speak for the Hamlet essay. So this is called a humanizer, is the overall term for that kind of website. There are several of them. Students know this exists. Some of them are using it to generate the ChatGPT answer and then make it sound like themselves. If they would just work hard enough with the same level of effort. But I want you to know that this exists, and there's not really a great way to detect that. So we'll talk about assignments that are a little bit more resistant later on. So these humanizers come up with tortured phrases sometimes, right? So they replace individual words with other words. So that's how you get George W. Shrub. That's how big data turns into colossal information. So if you get a paper that has weird phrases like that, it's almost certainly been run through Humanizer, so that it's replacing individual words and not sound like AI. It just sounds like an idiot now. Job postings with AI skills. So increasingly, the employers are including AI skills in the job posting, right? So it's that curve actually took a leap in 2021, which was an interesting jump right before ChatGPT went viral. Because there were, AI, of course, is bigger than generative AI. We talked about that earlier. But the leap is getting bigger. And so this was as of last year. A different set of numbers from a workforce survey or an employer survey. So the big one in the middle, 66% of employers say they would not hire someone who did not have AI skills, 2/3. So the employers are expecting AI skills. Now they're much more unclear about what does that mean. What do you mean when you say AI skills? Exactly, they don't define that. But I'm gonna make an attempt to define AI fluency for you in a little bit. So this is an OpenAI survey and asking people from last year how they're using AI at work. I'm actually kind of encouraged by this result. So the top results are things like getting information, interpreting the meaning of something, documentation, consultation and advice to others. It's not until like the fourth or fifth you get to thinking creatively or making decisions. So they're actually using AI to supplement their thinking primarily, which is really what I want to see, is people using AI to supplement their thinking, not replace their thinking. And out there in the workforce, that is in fact what they're doing. So we need to keep that in mind as we're trying to skill up students in our classes. All right, so now I'm going to sort of go quadrant by quadrant through the overall system. The left side, again, is the leaning in side, and I'm going to start with AI fluency. If that's what the employers are saying that they want, it's in those job postings. So there's a yellow slide. Call them out. What are the things and it's not necessarily single words. Many of them are phrases in my own mind. What do we mean when we say students have AI fluency? What is that? What is a sub-skill of that?
Be able to interpret results.
Interpret results, good.
Prompt engineering.
Prompt engineering, yep. You know how to prompt it well. Any more?
I actually know what tools they would use.
Yeah, tool selection, so that's good.
Iterating.
How to iterate, right?
Knowing the basics like what's LLM, what is generative AI as opposed to an assistant.
Right, and even understanding, how AI works. It's a word predictor, right? It hallucinates sometimes. It's been built on, sometimes garbage or biased information. So all of that is that's all number one, understanding how AI works. So already in this workshop, we've gone through sort of number one. We haven't really gone too much into number two yet. The ethics of it, when to use it, when not to use it. The digital adaptability, that's a phrase that doesn't stand on its own. I have to explain that. Let me approach it from this angle. Somebody is going to tell you, hey, there's this new AI tool, or the newest Claude model or the newest Gemini model. You've got to try this. Someone's going to say that to you every month for the rest of your life. Kind of a sad thought, actually, in some ways, that life is that different forever. The tools constantly leapfrog each other. There's always new ones. And so all of us need to have that adaptability. It's actually on the emotional side of Bloom's taxonomy, not the cognitive side. It's a changed behavior that we're looking for. We don't want the students to roll their eyes when the employer says there's this new AI we need you to do. We need them to roll with it. My verbal fun for the day.
I have a comment, being able to modify AI content in other programs, to use an AI generated program and pull it into Photoshop and modify it, add more layers and information.
Yeah, I think that's part of number 5. So evaluating AI output and then adding human value. So I think that was mentioned over here as well, is that, we should not be content with, oh, I got ChatGPT to give me an answer, right? That answer is incomplete, it's insufficient, it's not deep enough. So especially at college, I think that our message needs to be, you need to go beyond that. And there's prompt engineering that you had mentioned. So so many of the same topics. So all right, this is the only syllogism in the whole slideshow presentation. Premise, conclusion. So the students will not learn AI fluency from a lecture. You cannot just lecture to them and now they have AI fluency. That's my premise. You agree? They're not gonna learn it, they have to experience it. Okay, so we tell them, go home and learn from ChatGPT, but there's no grade for it. Realistically, I don't think they're gonna do it, right? Therefore, well, not therefore. So we're gonna need to assign a grade to it. But in most of our classes, I don't want to change the whole grade structure out, so it's all about AI. So it needs to be a small bit of the overall grade structure where we give them points for, doing the AI fluency activities I want them to do. Okay, which leads me to discussion board assignments. So small percentage overall, but we still have students do it. So I'm going to give you some examples of what that might look like. So this would be, it's not customized to a class yet, but asking the students on a discussion board assignments to get the LLM's argument for, the mutually assured destruction doctrine with nuclear war doesn't work. So have the LLM come up with that argument, and then the human crafts a rebuttal. That's one such example. And another, I'm not going to show you all the slides on this, but one that's been very successful for me is having the students generate, with ChatGPT specifically, because Copilot won't do it, an annotated bibliography about something that we're working on right now. And then once they get that list, go to the library website and verify whether each one is real or hallucinated. And if it's ChatGPT that you told them to use, there will almost always be a hallucination in the citations. And so students actually find that valuable. I once gave that to them at the end of the semester, and then at the end of the semester evaluations, I heard from 2 students, that was a great assignment. I wish you had done that at the beginning of the semester. So that they understood about hallucinations a little bit better before the semester began. Yeah.
In this evaluation that you have up here, how do you ensure students don't have the LLM crafted?
Do the second part, yeah. So the hope is that a couple of ways. First, I think you kind of need to come in with this veneer of, I know all about AI. And it's going to shine through if your syllabus and your assignments are forcing them to live AI and use AI. They should know better than to mess with you a little bit. Most of the students will know better than to mess with you because you're so AI fluent. I have my students do something like, 10 of these discussion board assignments to learn different things about, hallucinations, or that you could have a conversation with it. That's another one of these things. At the end of the day, we're far enough along and deep enough years into this, I would probably just tell students, look, I understand you could have AI do the human part as well. Don't. So we're going to talk about the persuasion elements a little bit later, but that there's a little bit of bleed here with the lean away side, the writing without AI part we're going to talk about later. So let's come back to that one, how to convince students not to do it. So our office wrote a book. This is 60, I think, yeah, 60 some discussion board ideas basically that teach AI fluency. Okay, so again, you'll all have access to the full slideshow. You don't need to grab any of this now, but it's completely free, open source. You can use it, you can share it with everyone else. But it's the one that was on screen a second ago about craft or rebuttal. That's one of the 60. The hallucination check with your library. That's one of the 60. So that's what they're just small assignments that you would potentially do to have the students understand the limits of what AI.
And is this tailored for ChatGPT or?
No, it's actually any LLM.
Okay.
Do you
So-
find that spending time on this takes away from the content of what you would like to cover in the course?
So I teach face-to-face classes. It's not a fully online class. And this is a do-at-home piece of homework. So we don't actually spend that much of the face-to-face time talking about what happened here. So it's purely them interacting with it. And then there's usually a reflection afterwards as well, right? Like, what did you learn by realizing that 2 of the 3 citations were hallucinated? And so I normally just let that speak for itself instead of having it take a class time. Because I'm here to do other things in class, not just talk about AI. Ironically, the next class will be about them, so probably will talk about it. But when I was teaching interpreting the Hunger Games, we have Hunger Games stuff to talk about, not the AI stuff. So I just didn't do it much in the face-to-face time. So I'm gonna probably make reference to this a few times today. This is my own chart of what large language models are good at on the left side and what humans are good at on the right side, or maybe the way to read that is what humans should be doing. Don't let AI do those things on the right. AI can do these things on the left. But those things on the left are not all made equally. So AI is actually okay at writing first drafts. I don't know that I want it to write first drafts. So the ones that are highlighted in yellow are the ones that I think we should really lean into. I think we should have students doing, and us, we ourselves should be doing that with everything that, especially with writing, everything that touches writing in your day jobs should be brainstorming and summarizing, finding patterns, needles and haystacks, all those things. It's perfectly safe to do that because AI is not doing the thinking for you. It's a thought partner, maybe, but you are reserving the actual thought and decision as a human. The other things are a little less clear, like the AI might be making the decisions for you, which is not so good.
And this is yours, right?
This is mine.
So if we cite, I want to make sure we're.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's funny, I created this slide in 2023. Originally I had summarizing at the top and now I put brainstorming at the top. And then I was in one of these sessions when I realized, you know, it's stupid. I put brainstorming as the #1 skill, but I didn't brainstorm with AI. I just made this up as a human. So eventually I did create, I thought it was going to be the next slide. Eventually I did create an AI version of, what are you good at? But when it comes to brainstorming, I'm going to suggest that you do the human brainstorming first and then the AI brainstorming as a double check. If you do AI brainstorming first, it's going to look so complete that you can't imagine anything else to add to it. And now you're stuck at the level of whatever ChatGPT comes up with. Human brainstorming first. So that's that first corner of AI fluency. Co-creation. So co-creation is where, you and the AI are both creating the product, okay? There are objections to co-creation. But then, of course, there have been objections to new technologies for a long time, right? So here's Baudelaire objecting to photography. It's going to ruin art. We can go older than that, right? Here's Socrates objecting to writing because people will lose the ability to make arguments, to remember things. So technology doesn't always mean that, it's negative in and of itself. So I want us to sort of keep this in mind. There's a blogger named Ethan Mollick. He's a Wharton professor, and who's fairly well known, especially amongst academics, for being on the forefront of what AI can do, and informing the rest of us about, how to think about these things. So one of the things he came up with early is the centaur versus cyborg concept. A centaur has a clear human part and a clear horse part. So if you're using AI like a centaur, there's a clear human part and then there's a clear AI part. So like that first thing we had on screen about, have AI craft an argument and then the human part, you write a rebuttal. That's the centaur model. Where AI is my thought partner as opposed to just creating it with AI. So the cyborg is much more mixed up. It's not clear where's human, where's machine. And the writing process, what that means is you're probably using AI at every level. You brainstorm initially, you find a thesis, you write one and then AI improves it, or then AI creates an outline and then you improve the outline. There's a lot of back and forth with AI throughout the writing process, is where AI is helping you to actually create it. So co-creation is, for many faculty, anathema to what we want. We don't want the students to be using AI to create the products that they're turning in for a grade. And yet, that's what the employers are going to be asking. So co-authorship is complicated. This is a Colorado State Fair from a few years ago. The category was digital, digital arts, by which they meant Photoshop. Like, you created this thing in Photoshop. You didn't use AI to do that. So this person used AI to create this image. It won first place. And then he came out, he outed himself saying, I used AI for that, which made everyone mad associated with that competition. And then he applied for copyright, and the Copyright Office said no. We'll talk about copyright a little bit more later on, but the nature of authorship is muddy now. Like if you're prompting it, especially if you're prompting it a lot of times, but it does the heavy lifting of saying the actual words, Who's the author of that? And it's complicated.
Was that recently reaffirmed that AI works cannot be copyrighted?
So yeah, we'll skip over the slide when we get there. So the answer is correct. The outputs are not copyrightable. The US copyright, at least in the US Copyright Office has said they will only copyright human work. However, the prompts were human work, so the prompts could be copyrighted, but the output cannot, which actually means that AI output is public. Like that image that took this guy hundreds of tries to win the Colorado State Fair, I could use that and sell a book with that on the cover because he can't copyright it. So as you might imagine, the employers of the future, so not thinking about, what's happening in a college class, but what you're training the students to do after they graduate, those employers, they're probably not going to ask, so here's your, use an office space reference, your TPS report, right? Here's your TPS report. How much of this did ChatGPT write? They're not going to ask that question. They don't care. They just want the TPS report, right? Or the annual report, or whatever the thing is. They want the work product, and they're not going to ask, did AI do some of that? So this is the foundation of my argument that somewhere in their college career, they're going to need to be upskilled on how to do it with AI in a way that gives a result that's not just the ChatGPT output, right? It's better than the ChatGPT output. Maybe it's more of that cyborg back and forth kind of thing. So yeah, sort of what I said here originally, that the employers don't care if you use, so the teaching version of that is in that semester where we're going to prepare them for life after graduation, and maybe it's a capstone, just to let you know where my thinking is going here, late in their college career. Maybe we turn to co-creation. Maybe we say, I don't care if you use AI for this product, here's the work product I want you to turn in and I'm going to grade it. Because that's what's going to happen out in the workforce. So one of the ways to react, to think about as teachers, whether or not this is a class where you're letting them fully co-create, this slide's a little amorphous, it can apply anywhere, is to just grade the product that comes in. A lot of students are not good at prompting. They'll get a ChatGPT output that you can see right through. You know right away this ChatGPT. You're nodding, how many do you teach?
Yeah, what I do now is in public discussion boards, I actually call them out and said, hey, I'm a fan of AI, but this is what's wrong. And I do it publicly.
To shame them.
Well, not to shame them, but to say, look, it's recognizable AI, but this is what you could have done to put your own co-creation into this. So
Yeah.
you're not just putting output out. It's not a shaming technique. I don't care about shaming students. I don't care if they use AI, and I tell them that you can use AI, but use it right.
But use it right, yeah.
But we haven't trained them how to use it right.
Yes.
And that's the real problem.
Yeah, they don't, we assume that they're all familiar with it, but this whole concept of digital natives is a little bit fake, actually. Students are good with the technology that they know and that they like, which probably means Instagram and TikTok, but doesn't mean that they know all technologies, that they're good with technology or that they're good with AI. So we do, in fact, have to teach it to them to use it the right way. So, so just grading it is one option for you to think about, like instead of, changing around the fact that, moving away from essays, doing other things, you could just still assign essays and just grade the result that comes in. What that means is that some of your students will have gotten good at prompting and have skated by and gotten a grade that they shouldn't have deserved, but maybe you don't care. I talked to some faculty who they're not going to worry about that smaller percentage of students. It could create some reputational damage, however, if the local employers start feeling like MTSU students aren't up to snuff. So we don't want that either. So when it comes to, co-creation in general, this is a bit of a summary, right? So you could do nothing and just grade it the way it is. You could assign specific human and AI tasks, or you could redesign to be full co-creation, asking them, telling them to brainstorm, telling them to use AI to summarize, maybe even using AI to help draft or improve their draft. There are other things I have recorded here, like speakers of languages other than English, right? If they struggle to write an essay in English, can use AI as a last step to bring it up to standard academic English. So So I made mention of this earlier. That's meant to capture a spiral curriculum on the right-hand side, where things are sort of introduced once and reinforced later, and then there's mastery at the end. I think AI is offering an opportunity in each of our departments to have a real conversation about the classes required to graduate in this major and what we're teaching in those classes. AI needs to be in there somewhere. Somewhere needs to be AI fluency. Maybe that's early on in that degree program. Somewhere there needs to be co-creation because the employers are expecting that. And again, I would put that closer to the end. What it probably means is a lot of the middle parts of a four-year curriculum might be on the refusal side rather than on the using AI side. But it's going to be messy. You'll have some instructors who like the idea of co-creation from the beginning. And I think we need to create space for that in the department conversations, as well as space for people who don't want to do AI at all. Like, I don't know that that's automatically a crisis if the department doesn't agree with itself about, what are we doing about AI? I think there's space for all of those. So, mentioned that top part, using AI for all parts of the writing process. I said something earlier about brainstorming, that you always want to do the human part first. That's going to get difficult first. But also, it could be, there is a version of the future where students don't need to know how to brainstorm an essay topic. Right? We no longer need to know how to use a slide rule. We no longer need to know how to fix my VW bug on the side of the road. Right? We don't need to know those things. So it could be that that the future is that critical thinking in the future looks different. So I want to open that possibility that that maybe co-creation, it turns out, is going to be the prescient way of approaching this from the very beginning throughout all of college. So this is where you should get a little mad that I'm not giving you answers or directions so much as ideas and contradictions. Because some of these ideas are in fact contradictory with each other. So I'm giving you options rather than telling you, what the ideal system would look like. With co-creation, revision matters more. The conversation is what you're focusing on rather than the product. You're focusing more on the process. I think I'll talk a little bit about process creating here in a second. And future thinking might only be problem solving, where it's not approaching critical thinking the same way. We might not need to learn fundamentals in the same way. And iteration, a focus on iteration is not the same thing as process. It's just getting them to understand the product is not the point. It's iterating that is the point. There's this probably apocryphal quote from Thomas Edison, right? I found 10,000 ways that a light bulb does not work. So here's an example of me brainstorming with AI. I had asked ChatGPT for a list of what do assessments look like in a co-created class, where there's co-creation going on. And so I will say that if you're going to use AI to brainstorm, especially if you're going to put it on a slide, one best practice is to ask for more than you need, right? So I had asked for 25 examples because some of what it comes up with is absolute junk. And some of it is actually just wrong. And so I strip those out and leave the good ideas up on screen. I don't know how realistic some of these are. We have, I don't want to take too much of time with just this, but using AI as your teacher aid to come up with assessment ideas is something you should be doing if you haven't already turned to that, sort of a meta conversation with AI. So I know that there are some staff in attendance here as well as online. This is another open source book that we wrote. This is all about different ways to use AI in your day job. So using it to brainstorm those things that I just mentioned, using it to, so we talk in there as well about image generation for, whatever it is, a flyer you're building, PowerPoint. So you've probably been seeing that I've got a lot of PowerPoint cartoon animals. Sorry, not PowerPoint, AI generated cartoon animals throughout this presentation. I don't go to Google Images anymore. Even when you select open source. That's a lie. The person who uploaded it just said, yeah, this is open source, sure, but it wasn't. So this is the only safe way to get images. So we're switching. Right side, writing without AI. Okay. The point I'm trying to make, you can still assign essays. That's a good thing, I think. But how we're going to get there is by switching something in our brains. Recognizing that AI is here, AI is forever, and it's just a learning tool like all these other things. Were any of you are around colleges or even teaching when Wikipedia was new? We lost our collective minds on the UCF campus. We thought it was the end of education. Students would never read anything ever again, that they're just going to get wrong information. And so to prove a point, I went on the UCF Wikipedia website and I vandalized it. I told it that the inventor of the Citronaut, our first mascot in the 1960s, before I was even born, was Kevin Yee. It stayed there for 9 years. There's misinformation on the Wikipedia. I was trying to point out the Wikipedia, even though it's in print, it's really the same thing as the Welsh sign. Just because it's in print does not mean it's trustworthy. That's what we were trying to convince students of. And so I would show my own classes, like, you can't trust it. Look, I wasn't even born. Look at that. Of course, I left UCF and came back, and the page is totally different. I tried to vandalize it again, and it wouldn't let me. So Wikipedia has actually gotten more trustworthy over time. And we, the teachers, have gotten less lose our heads over it. We understand that it's a starting point, not an ending point. And I think the students do too. So we need to get there with AI, is where I'm suggesting, is that eventually we will convince ourselves, we will convince the students that it's just another tool like the calculator. There are no anti-calculator engineers. We understand the calculator is a tool. So top left. Create an AI output and then do something with it. So that's really the wisdom of the left half of my pie chart. Create an AI output and do something. I think students in 2023 knew how to do something with the AI output. Why? Because they were classically trained in a world where there was no AI. There was no shortcuts available to them. So your students in 2022, 23 knew how to analyze and rebut and all of those things from the AI output. It's now been 3 years since that moment. And a student who chooses to use AI shortcuts probably no longer knows how to critique an AI output anymore. So what worries me is that, everyone's brains get good at what we tell them to do and not good at other things. So Nicholas Carr originally wrote an essay, it's in the bottom right, is Google making us stupid, spelled like Google, in The Atlantic. He later turned into a book called The Shallows. What's his answer? Is Google making us stupid?
About some things.
Sort of, yes. Right. So his argument is that the brain is plastic, not that kind of plastic, but it changes itself. It gets good at what you tell it to do, right? So let's rewind to, I don't know, 1991, when I turned 21. You go into a bar in 1991 and you meet someone interesting and you get their phone number. What do you do to remember that phone number?
Yes.
You don't have a pen. You're in a bar. It's 1991. There's no pen. You do what?
Sing it.
I did not ever do the singing it part. No, that would probably work. Yeah. So, anyone remember what you did when you learned a phone number and you needed to remember it later?
Just kidding.
Yeah, you repeat it a bunch of times in your head, and then you repeat it again 5 minutes later. So it turns out brain, learning science knows all these answers now. That's the way memory works, is through spaced repetition. It has to be spaced out. Today, I do not know my kids' phone numbers. They're 19 and 23 years old. They do not know their phone numbers. I know my wife's because that was the same phone number from before there was smartphones. So our brains have gotten bad at remembering phone numbers because we don't do that anymore, right? The brain gets good only what you tell it to do. So if you stop telling the brain to do certain things, it will stop being able to do those things. So cognitive offloading as a concept means something else does the thinking for me. It's not automatically evil, right? My phone remembering my kids' phone numbers, that's good. It lets me focus my cognition on things that matter. But the offloading where it's delegating thinking, you see in the bottom quote in blue, is often seen as having a more deleterious effect. It affects critical thinking. There have been some studies on this now that the students are less good at doing critical thinking if they've been engaged in letting AI do the thinking for them. So this is an argument against co-creation. Like I said, there's some contradictions built in here. Okay, so this is an AAC&U faculty survey, just came out in January, that faculty are very concerned about the critical thinking. So this is a 95% believe that the students are over-relying on AI tools. So if you're in the camp that feels like this is a problem, the students are using AI too much and it's interfering with their ability to learn, you're in good company nationally. People are very worried about and convinced that this is going to be a problem. So brain rot, word of the year in 2024 for, was that Oxford English? Yeah, Oxford word of the year. Brain rot is essentially, de-skilling the brain, right? It's you're less good at the things you used to be because of all that cognitive offloading. And this is ultimately where it leads. I've never seen this movie. Someone usually throws something at me when I admit that I've not seen this movie. Apparently it has its fans. The movie is about this normal Joe Schmo in 2006 who goes to, I think it's an army experiment and ends up cryogenically frozen or something like that. Wakes up in the future, and what's happened over time is everyone's got stupider and stupider, and he's now the smartest person on the planet. But the word is great, idiocracy, right? That we might be facing a world where everyone is only as good as ChatGPT. If that's, this whole, brain, if the brain doesn't get practice doing those things, it's only going to be as good at things that we practice doing. So people will be good at prompting, perhaps. So this is all an argument that we actually need the right side of the pie chart, where we defend doing, I hate to say it, but some of the old-fashioned things that are not about leaning into AI. Okay, we are coming back to cheating. You already answered some of them, but I'll let you repeat. What are some of the reasons students cheat? They're different reasons.
So what they're finding is if it's an assignment that's like inconsequential to them, like they don't feel like it adds to their learning, like maybe they feel like it's busy work, or if they themselves like ran out of time, they just don't have time to get the assignment done, or if the assignment's like maybe not worth much points to them, so it's kind of like a risk they're willing to take. I suppose they also cheat because they don't know and they want the fast and easy way to get there.
Yeah. Any others?
They're so driven by grade.
Driven by grades.
And they want that grade, and so they tend to use any tool to try to do their best job. Obviously more important if it's higher weight.
We have another comment from the Zoom that says they only care about grades, not the actual learning.
Grades, not the learning, yeah.
I could also think AI is better at it than we are.
Some of them do. Although if you do that first QR code that I had of those discussion board assignments, it's actually pretty validating for the students. They recognize that they're better than AI out of the box, which is, it demystifies it for a lot of them. I think it's valuable to do that. So we have very similar lists, right? The degree gets me the job. Once I have the piece of paper, then they'll train me in what I really need to know. That's a common student mindset. It's wrong. The employers hate that mindset, but a lot of our students have it. They don't think that college is good for anything other than the degree. They're not interested in the learning, right? Everyone else does it, I'll fall behind. So again, with the grade, it's a victimless crime. I'm not going to get caught. So remember the detectors, right? They're probably not going to get caught. I need to cheat to pass. I don't have enough time. Several of you said that about time. The ones in yellow are in yellow because they really seem to line up with AI, right? Oh, I don't have enough time. Boom, here's a tool that'll spit it out for you in seconds. Not going to get caught is true. You're not going to get caught. Victimless crime, yeah, I'm not harming Stephen King. I'm just printing this thing out. So what we need is a way. So long before AI, this has been true. This is sort of a summary of the national literature on why students cheat. The problem is that some students cheat for only one of these reasons, but not the others. And so an intervention that solves this one doesn't really speak to the other ones. And so there are students in the room who are cheating for all five of these, any of the five of these reasons or some combination of them. So what we really need is a way to convince students that none of these should apply to them. And I think job loss is going to be our leverage here. Right? So the employers are expecting, it's one of their top skills is AI fluency. The students are already worried about jobs. And so if they're seeing headlines about Amazon layoffs and all those other things, students are a lot worried about jobs. I think the jobs argument, there's the Amazon, 14,000 jobs, I was gonna call it dollars, 14,000 jobs in October. Do I have the January one? No. There's another one that happened in January. Amazon again laid off 16,000, I think it was the second time. I distrust this a little bit. I think it's actually just regular layoffs, not AI. But they're claiming AI is the reason.
Well, they're saying the coders in particular.
Yeah, I would be worried actually to be a computer science, a coder going forward. It is a lot of what's happening in the parts that I believe is that the senior engineer, that one stays there, and the team of 6 junior engineers got laid off. So now this person is doing the work of 7 people using AI, which sounds great for the bottom line, but where's that pipeline where the junior engineers become senior engineers? So socially, we're going to have a problem eventually, and that might actually lead to some kind of AI plateau, that software is only going to be as good as ChatGPT can make it by the time those senior engineers retire. That's another possible future we're facing. So I think the jobs danger might be the way we try to convince students, don't take the AI shortcuts. You need to be better than AI. You can't be just extrinsically motivated.
For number 3, there is a victim. Student is the victim.
The student, yeah, that's a good one. Number 3, actually, I usually admit that that's the weakest of these answers.
But I think that's the argument I try to make with them, is that they're hurting themselves. They're not hurting me, the educator. I have my job.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna say something about cheating is cheating yourself in a second, but these are variations of the same thing. Like cheating is cheating yourself. You really need these skills. These shortcuts are not in your best interest for getting that job and keeping that job, right? So those messages is what we need to infuse throughout the curriculum. We want the students to think of AI as a thought partner. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Excuse me, Kevin. So one of our staff members is contributing to the Zoom chat. In the administrative professional sect, there's a lot of discussion that we will need to be proficient with AI tools, but those with excellent soft skills will be the ones who are most employable.
Yeah, I've seen that argument a few times, actually, many of them from the technology CEOs, that soft skills are going to matter more than ever. I've actually seen, I forget, it wasn't the CEO, it was like the president of one of these companies saying, one of the most important degrees in the future will be humanities, because a lot of the tech and the science can be handled by the machines. But knowing, how to read people, how to do things in a way that convinces people is a humanities thing. So in our learning and development world, we've got a phrase, sage on the stage, which is, guy giving a lecture, woman giving a lecture. We tried to move away from sage on the stage to guide on the side, where we're showing students how to do things rather than what they are. So we had to ask ChatGPT for a rhyme. If we're going to focus on the why, we came up with coach for the approach. So think about that. So sage of the stage is, I'm going to give students content. Here's the what, right? If we're a facilitator and not a lecturer, we're guide on the side. We're talking about how to do it, but we're skipping why you should do it. So what we really need is a set of messages to students throughout the semester on why the shortcuts are a bad idea, and being transparent about why we're assigning them these assignments towards building certain skills. So yeah, here, you're cheating yourself, right? It's always been true. It's just that the phrase is such a cliche at this point. I don't even really say it anymore. So I want to try to find ways to keep this message, but not have the same cliche phrase. So I want to try to convince them that AI actually will take your job if it can do it. That your job is to be better than AI. Okay? And this is really the central argument in it. Using AI to write your Hamlet essay is like lifting weights in the gym with a forklift. The weights are being lifted, the Hamlet essay is being written, is being created, but no one's getting any benefit out of that, right? Like the purpose of the gym is struggle. It's supposed to be hard because that's what builds the muscle. And if you're not struggling, you're not building the muscle. Same thing with the brain. We're here at college to train brains, and if you're not struggling, you're not building the critical thinking. This is actually kind of a novel thing for students to think about, actually. So I want to find ways to say all those things. And so throughout the semester, I want to sort of blanket the students with messages along those lines. Robbing your future, cheating yourself. Find different ways to say it in the syllabus and the grading scheme and the way you interact with them before the assignment, the way you explain the assignment with transparency, why we're doing this assignment. And even discussing things like grit, growth mindset, you know. So lots of messaging throughout the semester that is really about, at its core, it's about don't take these shortcuts. It's not always the same message, but it's variations of that message, including, you know, real, you know, regular motivation. So our third book about ideas is this, how to sprinkle messages throughout the semester that is trying to convince students don't take those shortcuts. So this comes back to your earlier, you were asking about how do we convince them to not let the AI do the human
Yeah,
part.
to do the rebuttal.
To do the rebuttal. Yeah, this is part of that. Is if we have enough messaging that cheating is cheating yourself without saying those words every time, eventually I think it might have some effect. It won't be perfect. Not every student is going to buy it. Final section. And I've got 12 minutes. I sometimes have a slide here where a translation in English from French. Napoleon, it says, "Dress me slowly, for I am in a hurry." So if you're in a hurry and you dress fast, you make mistakes. Napoleon knew that. So I use it sometimes in my slides to point out, rather than speed up because I'm behind, I'm going to slow down maybe and make sure that I say the things that are important. So AI fluency, AI friction. Friction is what we want in general. The difficult task, the challenge, the struggle that we were just talking about comes from friction. ChatGPT doing my assignment is frictionless. There's no friction in there. So I want to, as a teacher, want to create ways where there is friction back into that interaction. And that takes two forms. Either I create alternative deliverables that AI can't do today, or I change my assignments so that they're resilient and you can't just paste what I wrote into the assignment. So let's maybe do this one interactively. What are some deliverables that AI cannot turn in today? What's a way to grade students that AI is not going to help you?
In person,
In person, say more.
answering and asking questions in class and having that be part of it.
Okay, so if you're making it a participation grade, that would work.
Yeah.
A more formal version of that is just oral exams, like
Yeah, with that. And
an oral, like an oral interview or something. Blue Book is another one, yeah.
I still do Blue Book.
Yeah. So Blue Book has some problems, like students might not have been taught handwriting. We've been hammering, for decades, we've been hammering the message to students, don't do writing in the last night, on the night before it's due. Writing is supposed to be a spaced out process over 2 weeks where you think about things. Oh, boom, here's a Blue Book exam where, guess what? You do have to think on your feet and figure out, like, if you're going to give that, you actually need to give them the strategies. How much of this is summary and detail so that you prove that you're doing it? How much of this is analysis? Where do you bring in any proof that you have? The fact that you should make a little bit of an outline before you start answering it. All of those are strategies that many of us have that students don't for AI. There's only a couple more, but get to those. I think we're doing those resilient assessments. So we're doing changing assignments first. So this is a way of assigning things that might be a little bit AI resistant. So track changes in Microsoft Word or Google Sheets suggestions, where you can see it's time-stamped when the students have done the work. So yes, they could go to AI and get a complete thing and then paste a little bit every day if they're that dedicated. I sort of suspect they would read it at that point, which is kind of tricking them into learning it. But yeah, this is one of them, is basically to force them to turn in a document, a docx file with track changes turned on. This is a different one. So authentic assessments. In our teaching and learning world, the way we use this is we say that, an authentic assessment is one that exactly measures what the outcome is supposed to be. If you're supposed to be able to repair refrigerators, the only authentic assessment is to give them a broken refrigerator and watch them repair it, not a multiple choice test. So most of what we do is actually an inauthentic assessment at college. But if you do something that is real world context, so this is more the way online people talk about authentic assessments, real world context, smaller tasks, reflective activities, I'll show you what this looks like, then they call it more authentic. So the assignment is to go to a real business, interview that person, find out what's broken about their business model, suggest some solutions. The idea is, the hope is that the students, it's so interesting that they're actually going to do it, as opposed to having AI do it. Although, let's be honest with each other, AI could actually fake all of those things if you prompt it the right way. And some students will. They just refuse to learn. You can lead a student to the university, but you can't make them think. A final presentation that includes like all those little pieces, yeah, so that's authentic assessment. And then there's usually a reflection that comes as well. This is my favorite. So this boils down to asking a question, an essay type question, that the AI would have no clue how to answer that. Go to module 3, read that lecture, apply those principles to the discussion board that you see in module 6. If you pasted that to ChatGPT, it'll give you an answer. But it's, it's making it up. It's full hallucination. So yes, the students could get the lecture out of module 3, but depending on how you placed it there, maybe there's no transcript and they have to actually rewatch it and do an entire screencast of it to get it into AI, which means now they're spending 60 minutes watching the video, unless they go and walk away from the
And
screen.
they learn.
And then they learn, yeah. And then they copy paste all of the discussion board. They could do all of that, yes, they could. But at least it's uphill work as opposed to just saying, write an essay about Hamlet's relationship with his parents. Right, that's too easy. We want friction. So as it turns out, AI can help you. You can take your existing assignment prompts, put them into AI, paste it into AI and say, make this more AI resilient. Make it so that my students will not be able to just copy paste my prompt and then get the answer. So you don't even have to, this is kind of hard work actually to convert your own assignments, but AI can help you with that. You don't need the QR code. That's where I sort of pre-built one where you just paste an assignment in and it knows already to give you a resilience, but you don't need that. Okay, that's how you can pre-make in Copilot something that every time you click on it and then paste an assignment, it's just going to convert it to resilient. But you could just say that with the prompt. You don't need that. So one of the things, if you have online classes, fully online, asynchronous classes, you're going to need the lockdown browser and ProctorU turned on, because if they're not in front of you, they could be using AI. And if you just turn on lockdown browser, they could still get their phone out and use AI. So you need to have ProctorU watching them as well. So for fully online tests, and fully online tests might also be paragraph level answers. Maybe it's writing, typing tests. So that is an option for you. Fortunately, these things work. There are some risky things out there, AI agents that will do things in the browser, like like you can actually take a test on Canvas for the students, as long as they give the login and information, all that other stuff. But the lockdown browser defeats it. We've tested it. So you're going for asynchronous classes, online classes, you're going to have to do that for everything. So alternative deliverables, we already did the guessing part of that. We haven't talked about capstone exams. Some disciplines have this. If you're in, I don't know if there's nursing on this campus, but the NCLEX, right? The students have to pass the NCLEX or else they can't work as a nurse in the state, which ought to function like a sword of Damocles over the students, that you really need to learn this stuff because they're going to be tested on it later on. That's not true in history. Like if I get a history degree, there's no exam at the end, but maybe there should be. So that they get out of the one and done mentality as they move through their major. So I think that's another thing to talk about at your departments.
We actually have that requirement here.
And
Everyone has to do some sort of major field assessment.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes the capstone class itself functions as that, as opposed to a capstone exam that, gauges everything they've learned over the 4 years. So it's, in some cases, it's probably great, but it might be loosey-goosey in other cases. Recorded video, so a selfie video, basically. But the deep fakes are real, so this is not gonna last for long. Plus, if it's an online class, do you really know what your students actually look like? Blue books, we talked about handwriting, slower thinkers, neurotypicality being a problem for blue books. This was a real slide in this presentation until I realized that Google Slides can now create a spoken narration that goes with the slides that you've already built. So AI can do the whole thing. So I keep this in here to point out everything has a shelf life in terms of our workarounds. Damned if you do and damned if you don't, right? We have to teach AI fluency. We can't do only AI fluency. So yeah, that's the, believe it or not, it was 95 slides in 90 minutes. We've been taking questions as we go, but there are still a couple minutes. There are lingering questions. The students wanted to know about the future, and I didn't include the future slides because there's only so much you could do here, but.
I will also mention to the in-person crew, as Kevin was talking about, non-AI kind of assignments. One faculty member suggested a scavenger hunt. Find the page on the text where XYZ is found. Would be hard for AI to replicate. And then one kind of aside, I once asked AI to make an AI-proof assignment. Then I fed the assignment into AI and it aced it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not perfect when you ask it for how do I make this AI resilient. It'll say some of the same things we said actually about authentic assessment, but it's still defeatable. Like this is a very difficult problem for us right now. And I mentioned the agents that will sort of do things for you. That's going to get worse. We're not done with this AI conversation. As the agents become sort of free and everywhere, we're gonna have to redo all of this thinking again. Like, what do we do? Especially assessments and assignments when agents can just sort of do things for the students.
Well, thank you, Dr. Yee. Thank you to those who joined us. I've already posted in the Zoom room. We will share out the slides to the participants. And thank you all so much. Feel free to grab cookies and snacks and such on your way out. We're gonna load in for one more session this afternoon, but thank you to Dr. Yee.
I'm here for 15 more minutes of
Sure.
other questions. Maybe German literature, Disney blogging.
I write papers.
Do you?
I did one on the Galactic Star Cruiser.
Oh, yeah, actually, when I have my notebook LM slide up there, what I have up there is the 4-hour demise of the Galactic Star Cruiser podcast, some of that.